Incredible journey. Two homeless boys transform lives and reveal compassion after 27 heartwarming years. Jake and Eli stood in their cramped little room in the homeless shelter, staring at the peeling gray walls lined with barely their smiles from forgotten souls. At 16, they were together in a world that often seemed to overlook them. Just two boys clinging to dreams bigger than their surroundings. Life had dealt them a rough hand, yet hope flickered within them like a candle in the darkness, igniting a kind of resilience that many couldn't even fathom. The town was a treasure of American spirit, filled with families who shared their joy at the high school football games and pooled together for the community fundraiser. Jake and Eli navigated the school with trepidation, feeling invisible among the chatter and laughter. Whispers surrounded them, cruel and biting, but they kept their heads high. Both boys had dreams of college marching through their minds as they sought refuge in dusty books piled on worn-out shelves. They were connected not only by threads of hardship but by something more profound, an unyielding bond of friendship that wove comfort through their reality. As Friday approached, the air buzzed with excitement for the upcoming fundraiser, an event Jake and Eli saw as a lifeline, a chance to break through the barriers of their social isolation. Every penny raised could be a step closer to their aspirations, an opportunity to show their worth. With hearts pounding, they decided to face their fears and participate. But just as they began to shine, Eli fell ill, his body surrendering to weakness. Jake watched the spark dim in his friend's eyes, feeling helpless and afraid. In that moment of vulnerability, tension soared, leading to a gut-wrenching confrontation that tested their fragile friendship. "Why can't you just be strong for once?" Jake blurted out, pain lacing his voice like acid. The fallout left both boys reeling, each feeling as though they were letting the other down. But life had one more twist in store for them. When they found themselves at a mentorship meeting with Mr. Thompson, a beloved community leader, their struggles spilled over, exposing the raw truth of their reality. They hadn't planned for this. The waves of concern from the community flooded in, but it was also clear that the biases lingered, stubborn like weeds in a garden. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The people of their town started stepping forward to share their own stories, revealing layers of struggle and sacrifice that mirrored Jake and Eli's journey. With each story, misunderstandings peeled away, exposing shared humanity beneath. It was a moment tinged with both relief and heartbreak. The warmth of community began to crack the cold veneer around them. Yet, just when things appeared to change, fresh turmoil struck. A shocking scandal erupted in their beloved town, threatening to tear apart the fragile connections they had fought so hard to build. Would Jake and Eli find the strength to rise in unity, championing the cause for justice not only for themselves but for all those who found themselves in the same plight? As they braced themselves for the battle ahead, the threads of their dreams intertwined with the hope of a community awakening in solidarity. The answer hung tantalizingly in the air, urging the audience to turn the page in anticipation of what came next. The scandal swept through the town like a wildfire, consuming everything in its path. Gossip clung to the air, thick and suffocating, as people whispered in hushed tones about the mayor's alleged misappropriation of funds meant for the local schools and shelters. Jake and Eli could feel the weight of the community's distrust pressing heavy on their shoulders. With every passing day, it seemed that the people who had once opened their hearts were now closing ranks, retreating to their corners, scared and uncertain. Jake paced their small room, his mind racing. Eli lay on the thin mattress, visibly weaker but fighting to stay engaged. "We have to do something," Jake insisted, his voice vibrating with unyielding determination. "If we don't speak up now, everything we've fought for will collapse." Eli turned his head, meeting Jake's eyes. "But what can we do? We're just two kids, homeless kids." There was a shadow in his tone that echoed their fears. "We're not just homeless kids," Jake shot back, indignation sparking in him. "We're a part of this community. Our stories matter. Look at what happened in that meeting. When people heard us, things changed. Maybe we can do that again." Eli considered this, his brow furrowing as he thought. "You're right, but how do we get people to listen again?" The idea blossomed slowly, almost hesitantly between them, like a tenuous thread holding together their frayed hopes. A rally. They would organize a gathering not just for their own voices but for everyone who felt silenced. They envisioned a place where stories could collide like bursts of color, igniting the path to understanding and change. Days passed as they poured their energy into planning. They sought help, reaching out to Mr. Thompson, who adored their idea and jumped in with both feet. They snagged a community center for free and set up flyers. Slowly but surely, momentum began to build. On the day of the rally, the little community center buzzed with nervous energy. Jake and Eli stood at the entrance, hearts racing as people streamed in. Faces showed apprehension and curiosity, yet as familiar voices blended together, the spirit of unity began to materialize. Eli took a deep breath, his energy flickering like a candle. "I don't know if I can do this," he said, worry etched into his features. "You can. We can," Jake replied, squeezing his friend's shoulder. "Just remember what we're fighting for." When they stepped up to the makeshift stage, a hush fell over the crowd. Jake glanced at Eli, who nodded, and then the words flowed. They spoke not only of their own struggles, but also shared their journey stories of their friends at the shelter and the impact of the town's betrayal. As their voices soared, a profound silence enveloped them, a powerful awareness settling over everyone. People began to rise, sharing their own stories. Each testimony resonated like a heartbeat. Hope grew, filling the air like electricity, as more and more individuals stepped forward to speak. But then, just as they felt the currents of change flowing, a figure emerged from the back of the crowd. The mayor, his face twisted with contempt. "You think this charade will change anything?" Felt like a punch to the gut. The air thickened, laden with tension. Jake exchanged glances with Eli, both sensing that this was more than just a verbal fight. It was a moment that could alter the course of their lives. In that charged atmosphere, could they summon the courage to confront the man who had betrayed them? Would this be their chance to reclaim their narrative? Or would it shatter their newfound bond with the community? The answer waited just beyond the threshold of that moment. Jake's heart raced. The mayor's voice cut through the air like a knife, sharp and rude. People shifted in their seats, an uneasiness spreading through the crowd. Eli tightened his grip on the microphone, his knuckles white with anxiety. This wasn't just about them anymore. It was about everyone who felt the weight of the mayor's indifference. "Change doesn't come without a fight," Jake shot back, his voice steady. "We're not asking for permission. We're taking back what's ours." The crowd murmured, an undercurrent of agreement rippling through like the first hints of a storm. The mayor's eyes narrowed at Jake. "And what do you know about running a community? You're a couple of lost boys. You don't even have a roof over your heads." Eli glared, a fire igniting within him. "We may not have homes, but we have voices. And those voices matter." The words hung heavy in the air, emboldening others. Some in the crowd nodded as if waking from a long sleep, recognizing their own stories echoed in what Jake and Eli were declaring. In that moment, a woman stepped forward from the audience. Her eyes glimmered with unshed tears as she lifted her own voice. "I lost my job last month, and my kids are scared. We're living in a hotel right now, and I refuse to let my family fall apart." She broke down, her words pulling at the heartstrings of the audience, and soon others began to follow suit, sharing struggles intertwined with hope, unity sparking like fireworks overhead. As Eli listened, he felt the shift in the room. It was powerful. They were no longer just two kids standing in the shadows. They were part of something bigger. Stories of loss, of hunger, of perseverance flooded the community center. A ripple of anger had begun to simmer, threatening to boil over. The mayor crossed his arms, clearly agitated as more voices rose, voices he once ignored. "What you're all saying is irrelevant. You need to understand that I am your only ticket to resources. His tone dripped with condescension. Jake couldn't hold back the surge of frustration any longer. You think resources come from you alone? They come from us, from the community. If you'd just listen to us, you'd know what we really need. Eli watched as the crowd erupted in support claps, and cheers echoed off the walls, resonating with a collective yearning for change. It woke something in him, and he recalled how many days and nights they wandered the streets, holding on to their dreams in the face of despair. Then, the flicker of doubt returned momentarily. What if they couldn't keep this momentum going? What if the mayor called the police or kicked them out? But with every story shared, every hand raised, his fears began to diminish. Jake glanced at Eli, and in that moment, they both knew that whatever happened next would change them forever. The mayor, backed against the wall of their shared strength, was losing his grasp. Enough! The mayor barked, but the noise drowned him out. Outside, the faint sound of sirens approached in the distance, perhaps a warning of what was to come. Jake's breath caught. They're coming, he whispered, fear threading through him. Hope and dread collided in his chest. Eli's eyes widened. He felt the weight of the moment settle over them like a heavy blanket. Could they withstand it? Could they stand their ground against authority with all they had fought for on the line? As tension thickened in the air, a voice from the crowd boomed, calling for support. Let us not let him silence us. This is our moment. How would they handle the impending confrontation? And would they find a way to turn the tide in their favor or see their struggle meet a crushing end? The decision loomed as the door rattled, an ominous beat that echoed through every heart present. The door slammed open, and a flood of uniformed officers stepped inside. Their presence struck like a thunderclap, drowning out the energy that had ignited mere moments ago. Jake felt the crowd tense, shoulders shifting as if trying to physically block the encroaching authority. The officers, with stern faces and crossed arms, scanned the room, searching for trouble. Stay calm, Jake urged, raising his hands to quiet the rising swell of panic. Eli's fingers trembled around the microphone, and he exchanged a meaningful glance with Jake, both knowing this moment was pivotal. Who called for backup? The lead officer barked, his voice sharp. The mayor straightened, a smugness momentarily breaking through his irritation. They're disrupting the peace, officer. You need to restore order here. Jake's heart hammered. This was it. They had to stand firm. Order? He shouted, steeling himself against the fear clawing at his insides. What kind of order makes people silent about their struggles? We are not a threat. We are here to be heard. The room erupted once more, voices rising like a tidal wave against the officers, pleading for understanding, for change. Eli, finding his voice, joined in, we're not going anywhere until we're listened to. If you care about this community, help us. The officers looked at each other, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. Each shout from the crowd was charged with stories, frustrations, and hopes, creating an undeniable force. With each passing second, tension morphed into a growing resolve among the people. Enough! The lead officer called out, stepping forward with an authoritative glare. His hand rested nearly on his holster, but hesitation lingered in the air. You know you can't hold a rally without a permit. This needs to disperse now. A ripple of anger surged through the crowd, and a man near the front bellowed, we're not in a playground. We're fighting for our homes, our lives. What do you care? The officers shifted, and Jake saw a few guards visibly flinch. A chaotic jumble of emotions washed over him. Anxiety, passion, hope. He felt the masses behind him, their breath quickening, hearts racing alongside his. What would happen next? Eli glanced towards Jake and, in that split second, conveyed all that needed to be said. The fight wasn't over yet. Folks, listen, Jake shouted, wrestling the momentum back. If we walk out, nothing changes. If we give in now, we'll forever be silenced. Together we're unstoppable. Hope sparked in the room again, faces redirecting toward determination. Outside the sirens blared louder, but a new sound eclipsed it, the sound of fists meeting palms, shouts echoing in unity. Let them hear our voices. Eli called, his voice rising, emboldened. Let them know we exist. The crowd responded, yes, we exist. Jake dared to glance towards the officers again. Some of the expressions had softened. Maybe they weren't just shields of authority. Maybe they were human beings caught in the gears of a broken system, just like everyone else. He took a step forward, towards the officers, heart racing, breath steady. What if you listened? What if you chose to understand our pain, to feel our struggles? This isn't about permits or rules. This is about families, yours and ours. And in the faces of the police officers, he thought he saw a flicker, a hesitance, a yearning to connect. As the sirens wailed around them, Jake felt the crowd pulse with a new energy. Would they stand guard or finally break down the walls of division? What would it take to transform fear into compassion? And suddenly, Jake understood. The real fight was only just beginning. A deep breath filled the air, carrying everything: the worry, the fight, the will to reclaim hope. But what if their threads of courage unraveled just as quickly as they had woven together? Would they have the resolve to weave a new path? As the police shifted uneasily, the tension held them all captive, waiting for the next move. Jake took another step forward, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. He searched the faces of the officers, those hardened expressions now flickering with a hint of uncertainty. We're not here to fight you, he continued, his voice steady but softening. We're here because we want to pave a way for everyone, even you. We want to change things not just for us, but for this whole community. We want you to stand with us. The lead officer, who had remained resolute up to that point, shifted his weight. A muscle twitched in his jaw, and the flicker of understanding in his eyes hinted at a crack in his armor. Jake noticed subtle shifts around him. Officers were reflexively loosening their grips, exchanging glances charged with unspoken thoughts, even vulnerability. Listen, Eli piped up, determination sharpening his voice. We're not just a crowd of trouble. We're mothers, fathers, children, all of us struggling for survival. We're your neighbors, your friends. When do we get to talk? The crowd surged with newfound determination, echoing Eli's words. When do we get to talk? Jake felt a swell of emotion, a tidal wave of empathy washing over him, lifting him up. If they could just pull on those threads of compassion, maybe the officers would understand that they were not so different after all. The struggle for dignity, the fight for respect, it was universal. The lead officer inhaled deeply, clearly at a crossroads. Jake could almost see the decision weighing on him. Would he choose to engage, to empathize? Or would he succumb to the chains of his position, rooted in the rigid rules that drove them apart? Everyone deserves to be heard, he finally said, his voice steadier. But you can't just demand change without a plan. This isn't how communities interact. There are processes. But processes don't solve problems. They perpetuate them. A woman shouted from the front. You think the people in here don't know how the system works? We've played by the rules and look where it's got us. The officer's gaze fell to the ground for a brief moment, as if processing each word. Jake read the atmosphere around them, fear beginning to mix with some kind of hope, an electric undercurrent that suggested a shift. Maybe processes need to change, Jake added, stepping closer. How about a conversation, right here and now? Let us tell you our stories, and then maybe you can see what we see, the pain, the darkness, and help us find a way through it. At this, the murmur of the crowd grew again, animated and hopeful. The officers exchanged glances, uncertainty morphing into something that resembled curiosity, perhaps even resolve. The lead officer turned back to his fellow officers. Maybe they have a point. Maybe we should listen first, he said quietly. This time it was his turn to step forward. Outside the building, sirens blared, fading into the distance. Inside, voices filled the air with an urgent energy, the promise of what could be. The divide rattled around them like a fragile glass about to shatter. Jake could sense the electricity, that tense moment where everything hung in the balance. But just then, a loud crash came from one of the back doors, brimming with sudden chaos. The sharp snap of another reality intruded, solidifying the tension once more. Get back. An officer shouted as another commotion erupted. Jake's heart plummeted. What now? He exchanged worried glances with Eli before they both turned toward the noise, fears pulling their suspicions tight. In that instant, everything felt primal, the crowd as courage held by a thread, ready to snap, as they awaited the unfolding chaos. What was about to breach their fragile peace? With uncertainty swirling like a storm, Jake braced himself. They had fought hard to be heard, to rise above silence. But would they now face an obstacle that could shatter everything they had begun? The sound of the crash reverberated through the crowded space. Jake's heart raced as he turned towards the source. It was a door flung open, sending two young boys tumbling into the room, a cloud of dust swirling around them like a stage mist. They were disheveled, their clothes tattered and smudged. Panic washed over the crowd but quickly shifted to surprise, sparking a mix of concern and curiosity. "Hey, are you okay?" Jake called, instinctively taking a step toward them. The boys, looking no older than 10, locked eyes with him, wide and bewildered. With trembling voices, they spoke in frightened whispers. "We saw you," one of them exclaimed, his voice cracking under the weight of urgency. "We saw you talking to the cops. You have to help us." The tension in the room shifted. Curious glances exchanged as the crowd attempted to process this unexpected turn. The officers, still on high alert, seemed torn between their instincts to maintain order and the urgent need to respond to the children. "Help?" the lead officer repeated, surprise etching deeper lines on his face. "What do you mean?" The boys hesitated, casting glances at the crowd as if gauging their safety. It was then the second boy, visibly shaking, piped up, "They were chasing us. We just wanted food. We thought we could find help here." The room fell silent. The words hung in the air, wrapping around each person like a blanket of shared guilt. Jake felt his heart ache for these boys, letting their fear seep into him. Their innocent plea struck a chord that echoed in the hearts of those listening. Eli stepped closer, his voice softening. "You don't have to be scared. You're safe now. We want to help." He crouched down, making himself smaller and more approachable. "What happened out there?" The boys shared a quick glance before one of them, the younger one with wide, pleading eyes, took a deep breath. "We were out looking for food. We don't have a home. But the cops, they just kept saying to go away. We thought if we came here you could help us find a place to stay." Jake felt the weight of that revelation. He had been focused on the battle for his own voice and truth, and now he saw clearly that this moment was not just about the adults. Here, right at the heart of this intense confrontation, stood two children thrust into survival mode, desperate for compassion and understanding. "What are we doing?" he whispered to Eli, realization washing over him. "We need to listen," Eli replied, his face determined, yet softer now. "They need to be heard too. All of us. This isn't just about us anymore." The officers exchanged glances again, a flicker of humanity lighting their hardened faces. Jake felt a swell of hope, a possibility for something greater building in this volatile moment. "Let us talk," the lead officer finally said, stepping forward with a calm but firm demeanor. "But let us make sure it's safe for everyone." The boys, though visibly still shaky, seemed cautiously encouraged. As the crowd began to visibly relax, Jake felt a tide of emotions surge through him: fear, hope, and a sense of purpose. They were all in this together, buckling under the weight of shared struggles. His voice rose above the crowd. "Let us hear their story. We can all learn from it and maybe find a way to help everyone who is hurting." But just as they began to settle in for a dialogue, a sound sliced through the air, an approaching siren, louder this time. The tension rebuilt as everyone turned towards the door, mouths dry, eyes wide. "Are they coming back?" someone murmured, dread creeping back into the atmosphere. Jake's heart raced once more, wrestling with not just fear but an urgency to act. Would this moment slip away? Could they hold onto this fragile connection before it was shattered again? He had to know how to steer them all back toward hope, or if they were destined to drown in chaos once more. Would they find the strength to stand united, or was another storm on its way? The siren blared, sending shockwaves through the gathered crowd. Faces tightened, hearts raced, and nerves frayed as uncertainty settled over everyone like a heavy fog. Jake's eyes darted to the boys, their small frames trembling. In that moment, he felt an overwhelming urge to shield them, to protect their fragile spirits from the harsh realities outside. "Everyone, please," he shouted, his voice rising above the noise. "Let us focus on helping them. We can't let fear tear us apart now." Eli stood beside him, nodding in agreement. "That's right. We have to stay strong. Let us make sure these boys feel safe first." He looked at the boys, crouching even lower to meet them at their level. "Can you tell us your names?" The younger boy swallowed hard, the tension in his body easing just slightly. "I'm Lucas," he said softly, while his brother nudged him gently. "And I'm Alex," the older one added, his voice steadier now. Jake felt a surge of compassion listening to them, hope mingling with fear. "Lucas and Alex," he repeated, testing the names on his tongue. "You're not alone anymore. We'll figure this out together." Then the sirens stopped, leaving an eerie pause that settled uncomfortably on everyone. An officer with a steady demeanor stepped forward from the front lines, his squared shoulders a silent promise of protection. "I think we can lend some assistance here, but I need to ask you both a few questions." "No," Alex burst out, eyes wide and wild with panic. "Please, we just want to eat. We didn't mean to cause trouble." Jake instinctively took a step closer, ready to bridge the distance the officer had unintentionally created. "They're not the trouble here," he asserted, his voice fierce but calm. "They need compassion. They need to know people care about their lives." The crowd murmured in agreement, a wave of understanding rippling through them. The officer paused, glancing at his colleagues, then back to Jake. There was a shift in the air, an understanding dawning that perhaps these uniforms weren't just shields of authority but bearers of hope. Eli held Alex's gaze, his tone gentle. "Looks like we need food, too. Who here wants to help?" A few hands shot up, youthful spirits ignited by the call to action. Jake smiled warmly, admiration swelling in his chest. "Let us organize a little drive. Those willing, let us gather what we can from our own homes. Can goods, anything. We can put together a meal and some supplies to help these boys." The chatter of agreement grew louder, and the energy shifted. Jake watched the crowd transform from hesitant observers into allies, each person connecting over a shared mission. As they began to coordinate, Jake felt a spark, something shifting. A realization struck. They weren't just helping the boys. They were igniting compassion within themselves. But just as momentum built, Lucas crouched down, sniffling, casting furtive glances at the door. "Will they come back?" he asked, fear seeping into his voice again. A heavy silence fell. Jake's heart twisted. He glanced at Eli and the officer, both nodding slightly as if they understood the kid's fear. Jake crouched down beside Lucas. "We'll make sure nothing happens to you. We're all in this together. No one is leaving until we find a way for you to be safe." His promise hung in the air, full of unspoken weight. But would they really be able to weather the storm that seemed imminent? A bright flash of headlights cut through the dust-choked room, a car pulling up outside. The crowd froze, eyes fixed on the door where shadows danced in the flickering light. Jake's pulse quickened. What now? Were they about to face the storm they had all dreaded? Would they stand united, or would fear pull them apart again? The door creaked open, and a wave of chilly air swept through the room, sending shivers down Jake's spine. The headlights illuminated two silhouettes, one tall and imposing, the other smaller and nervous. As they stepped inside, the crowd collectively inhaled, a tight-knit band of breath held between them. "Jake?" The taller figure called out, voice firm but laced with concern. It was Officer Gregson, someone Jake had known for years. Gregson's eyes scanned the room, then landed on the boys, a softer expression replacing the sternness. The smaller figure, a young woman with red hair, followed closely behind. She was clutching a bag filled with supplies. "We heard about what happened and rushed over," she explained, her breath visibly fogging in the cool air, eyes wide with empathy. "I thought you might need some help." Relief washed over Jake, and the tension in the room shifted again, softening just a little. "We're organizing food for these boys," he said, excitement threading through his voice. "Lucas and Alex here," he motioned to the brothers, who were still huddled together. "They need our support." "What can we do?" Officer Gregson asked, his authoritative stance melting away as he stepped deeper into the circle, his focus entirely on the boys. Eli clapped his hands together, a bright grin breaking through the tension. "I'll coordinate the food collection. Every little bit helps." The crowd erupted into chatter. People began to pull out their phones, posting online calls for donations. Some rushed to their vehicles, eager to gather supplies, while others stayed behind, comforting the brothers and ensuring they felt safe amidst the chaos. Jake glanced at Lucas and Alex, who were slowly straightening up. Uncertainty swirled in their eyes, but there was something more: curiosity. Perhaps the way the community rallied around them was shifting the air in the room, making space for warmth in their fearful hearts. "I didn't know people would care," Lucas whispered, his voice almost lost in the buzz surrounding them. Jake knelt again, meeting his gaze. "Of course we care," Jake said earnestly. "Everyone deserves a little kindness, even when it's dark." Then, just as he felt hope blooming like wildflowers in spring, the door slammed open again. This time, it was two men, faces cloaked in shadows. They grinned, but it wasn't the kind of grin that settled comfortably in a warm heart. It was predatory, like wolves eyeing their next meal. "Hey there, boys," one of them called, stepping into the light. "Looks like a party. Mind if we join?" The atmosphere shifted again, cold and prickly. Jake's heart thumped in his chest, adrenaline surging through him. He glanced at Eli, who was already taking a protective stance beside him. It felt as if an invisible thread had tugged them all closer together, strangers united against a common threat. "I wouldn't recommend it," Eli said, his voice low and steady. Lucas and Alex flinched, and Jake felt a wave of protectiveness wash over him. "Get away from them," he shouted, stepping forward, ready to stand his ground. He glanced at the crowd, their faces taut with fear, mirroring his own. The tension crackled like static, each person holding their collective breath. Would fear try to tear them apart again, or would courage rise from the ashes of doubt? As Jake faced the intruders, he knew one thing for sure: they would not back down without a fight. This moment, raw and fragile, was a testament to their newfound resilience. But could they hold on to it when everything seemed to rest on the edge of uncertainty? The night loomed heavy, and the next move was about to change everything. What would happen when the stark choice between fear and courage lay before them? Jake steeled himself, feeling a surge of determination course through him. He kept his eyes locked on the two men, refusing to back down. Eli shifted beside him, muscles taut like drawn strings, and even the crowd quieted. All of them tuned in, waiting for what would come next. The men exchanged glances, their smiles widening as if savoring the fear they de-stirred. Now, we're just here to have a little fun. SNT that right?" The taller of the two taunted, taking a step forward. "Fun?" Jake shot back, anger rising in his throat. "What you think is fun is ruining lives. You can't just walk in here like you own the place." The young woman with red hair, still clutching her supplies, stood firmly behind Jake. "We're not afraid of you. These boys deserve safety, and we'll protect them," she declared, her voice surprisingly steady. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. It felt like a collective heartbeat, strong and unwavering against the tension. A promise that they wouldn't let fear define them. "Protect them?" The other man sneered, stepping closer. His eyes sparkled with mischief but burned with disdain. "They're nothing, just a couple of homeless kids. What can they possibly mean to you?" "More than you could ever know," Jake shot back, standing a little taller. He felt the power of the group behind him, their solidarity a shield against the shadows. Lucas and Alex, still frightened, were watching with wide eyes. Their fear was palpable, but now it was accompanied by a flicker of hope, something they had never experienced before. "If you want to hurt them, you'll have to go through all of us," Eli reiterated, his voice firm. The crowd tightened around the brothers, forming a barrier with their bodies, hearts beating in rhythm with the resolve forming. The two intruders hesitated, caught off guard. They glanced at one another, a hint of uncertainty creeping in. For all their bravado, they hadn't counted on the strength of a community standing together. "Is that right?" The first man laughed, though it felt more like a nervous chuckle than anything. "Well, maybe we'll take our fun elsewhere, boys. This place gives off too much bad energy for us." With that, they turned and headed toward the exit, but the tension lingered, wrapping around the room like a storm cloud. As the door swung shut behind them, a wave of relief washed over the crowd. Jake felt the weight of dread begin to lift, but he knew that their victory was fragile. Today they had faced a threat, but he understood that tomorrow might bring another. "Are you guys okay?" Jake knelt down to Lucas and Alex, who were still processing what just happened. Their eyes darted around, uncertainty still clinging to them. "I think so," Lucas whispered, his voice barely above a breath. "But were you really going to fight them?" Jake smiled gently, trying to diffuse the tension that still hung in the air. "Yeah. Because you're worth it. You both are." With tiny smiles beginning to form on their lips, it was as if some sort of warmth was igniting in the room all over again. Ever so slowly, the chatter resumed as people shared their own relief and support, the vibe shifting back toward community and compassion. But deep down, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. As he looked around at the faces, his friends, and the boys, a question lingered in his mind. Would they be ready for what would come next? The night wasn't over, and he knew soon they'd have to face the reality of their choices together. What would emerge from the shadows? And would the bonds they forged tonight hold strong when tested again? With the tension slowly unraveling in the room, Jake felt a shimmer of hope ignite within him. The threat had receded, but the warmth of friendship was growing stronger. People started acknowledging one another, hugging, exchanging words of gratitude, and offering support, each act weaving tighter the fragile strands of unity they had created together. "Hey, you guys!" Eli exclaimed, drawing everyone's attention. "Let us make sure Lucas and Alex have what they need." He turned to the young boys who were still grappling with the aftermath of their scare. "We're gonna feed you, get you some clothes. You'll be safe and you won't go hungry again. Right, everyone?" The crowd erupted in agreement, voices rising like a choir. "Yes, we're here for you." As people began to rally around the boys, Jake couldn't help but feel like they were part of something monumental. It wasn't just about them anymore. It was about every voice that had been silenced, every soul in need of compassion, every person ready to stand against apathy. With the help of the young woman, who introduced herself as Sarah, they gathered supplies and food. As they set up tables filled with sandwiches, blankets, and collected necessities, Lucas and Alex started to relax, the fear slowly melting away, replaced with wonder and camaraderie. "Wow, I can't believe this is happening," Lucas whispered to Alex, who nodded, his eyes wide as he marveled at the kindness surrounding them. But just as they settled into this newfound sense of security, a thought crossed Jake's mind. He instinctively found Eli his companion in this journey. "What about the mayor? He can't just ignore us after this." Eli nodded, understanding clearly that the fight was far from over. "We need to keep pushing for the change we started tonight. We can't lose this momentum." Gathering the crowd once more, Jake spoke up, fire lighting in his eyes. "We've just changed the game here. This isn't just about food or homes. It's about respect, about our stories. We need to take this energy, build on it, and ensure that no one is left behind." Cheers erupted again, the air thick with determination. They began to brainstorm ways to keep the community connected, ideas flowing. A food drive became monthly events to raise awareness for struggle, and to help gather resources for everyone in need. Stories shared among one another began to illuminate pathways for understanding and growth, breaking the cycle of silence. As the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden glow through the windows, Jake felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude swell within him. The lives of Lucas and Alex had touched them all in a way that reminded everyone of their shared humanity, each story echoing the needs for compassion, connection, and understanding. Finally, with the moon rising, illuminating their faces, Jake culminated the night with a heartfelt reminder. Together, we are stronger than any barriers that try to divide us. Let us continue to lift each other up, not just tonight, but moving forward. By standing together, we'll fight for every forgotten soul, including ours. Let us be the change we want to see. Applause, hugs, and laughter filled the space. The night was not just a night of survival. It was the birth of a movement, a powerful promise that compassion would prevail in the hearts of all. Lucas and Alex stood at the center, eyes shining with newfound confidence, witnessing the beauty of community blossoming around them. As they continued to share and inspire, Jake looked at Eli. "This is just the beginning. I senti it?" Eli beamed, pride igniting his voice. "Absolutely. We can do this together." At that moment, Jake realized that in this fight, they weren't just transforming their own lives. They were sparking change for everyone willing to listen. The world was about to wake up, and he smiled, knowing their stories, their struggles, and their triumphs would lead the way. Now, are you ready to support this channel and ensure you don't miss out on more inspiring stories like this? You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help share this powerful message. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this emotional journey. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Your support means everything. Together, we can spread hope and compassion like wildfire.